solihullradio.com.
Good evening, Solihull. My name's Geoff O'Brien, and this is it. This is my first broadcast from our new studios here in Touchwood. I hope you're enjoying our outputs now, and you're checking our Facebook feeds and things along those lines, so you can see what's coming up. And of course, today, if I tell you that sitting directly opposite me in our brand new studio is the fantastic Mr. Edward Jones from Thursfields Solicitors, which are based here in central Solihull. And they are partnering now with Solihull Radio to offer a monthly advice and sort of phone-in session here on the radio station. So if you are around and you are following our social media feeds, see which one of the four solicitors that they've sent across from their offices, and we can help you out if you've got a problem. You know, just get in touch. If you do want to get in touch with us, you can text the station 075 64 30 30 64, and I've learnt our new telephone number. Are you ready for this? It's 0121 70 40 185. If you want to talk to Edward today from Thursfields, 0121 70 40 185, or of course you can email your questions to studio@solihullradio.com. Thank you so much for supporting the station. We're so thankful and appreciative of all of the support we're getting here in Solihull. And of course, thank you must go to Touchwood for seeing the benefit of working with us. So here's some ELO to start with, and then I'll let Edward have a chat and tell us what we're going to be talking about tonight.
If you believe that's how it's gonna be, I better put you down. Get up, you take your look, then come down on the ground. You gotta save me now, you better turn around. When I looked around, I was heading down on somebody throw me down the line. Hey, hey.
There we have it. We begin the show with Yellow and Tightrope. I hope you're enjoying the outputs. Like I say, whoa, stop it. Cheeky. Now, I'm going to introduce you to our guest this evening. It's Mr. Edward Jones from Thursfields. Edward, how have you been?
Very well, thank you, Geoff.
Nice.
Good evening, everyone.
Nice to see you again here in our brand new Touchwood Studios. What do you think?
This is great. Luxury, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were reminiscing, 5-6 months ago, we were shivering, freezing our proverbials off.
In the old studio, which we were at the time very thankful for. But when you compare it to what we've got here in Central Solihull, it's absolutely amazing. Completely different, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right, tell us a little bit about your area of specialism for this evening's #Legal Hour here on Solihull Radio, and what have we got lined up for the listener?
Well, as listeners may remember from last time, my name's Edward from Thursfields. I'm a private client lawyer, a member of STEP, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. My specialisms are will writing, succession, estate planning, inheritance tax, probate and estate administration. But tonight I think we were going to have a bit of a chat about inheritance tax.
Okay, like I say, I'm not a legal expert, and Edward has been doing some tutorials for me over the last few months, and I have learnt quite a lot, I must say. If you want to ask Edward a question, it's a very simple and straightforward process. If you are listening live this evening, you're more than welcome to join in. It's 075 64 30 30 64 for a text. It's studio@solihullradio.com for an email. And if you want to phone and chat to Edward, it's 0121 70 40 185. Now, if you are listening to us via our Podbean podcast, thank you very much for choosing our featured content here, which is #Legal Hour from Solihull Radio. And by all means, you can always send Edward a question via studio@solihullradio.com for the next legal hour. And then we can answer that in our next series of podcasts for you. And we hope that's okay for you. So tonight is inheritance tax. Can you just give me a brief overview of how inheritance tax works, please?
We'll give it a go.
Yeah, good luck.
Brief being the question. So, private individuals, I suppose this is really targeted at in terms of taxation, and most of us will be aware with the ways in which we pay HM, Revenue and Customs, a bit of tax. So on our earnings, gets often deducted at source. On our savings, you would typically have a deduction for that depending on your situation. If you own stocks and shares and you sell them at a gain, you may pay capital gains tax. But inheritance tax is really another tax on top of those things, which in general terms is payable after you pass away. And if your estate is of a certain value and it goes to certain types of individuals, then you have to pay inheritance tax at that time. There's some situations that you have to pay inheritance tax, or IHT, I think we'll abbreviate from now on, during your lifetime, but we'll probably focus on after you've gone in this instance.
Okay. So, and inheritance tax, is it a band of tax or is it a percentage of?
So you basically look at, in a simple scenario, an estate, someone passes away, and we give under that person's will their whole estate to people who are what we call not exempt. So typically not a spouse or civil partner, not a charity, so other individuals such as children. How much is their estate worth? If it's over 325,000, then any amount over that band is charged at 40%. So typical example would be, let's say your estate after any deductions you can take off is 425,000, less your 325,000, £100,000 at 40%, £40,000.
Wow. And is, just between you and I, Edward, are there lots of different ways that we can take off some deductions to make that taxable amount slightly smaller, or are there ways around it?
So this is really the crux of it, really, in terms of a lot of what I do. So advising clients at Thursfields is really, we don't profess to do anything particularly sort of fancy or out there. It's just being experts who do this day to day. We know the process inside and out, and we know what the revenue actually give clients and individuals in terms of exemptions, allowances, things you can deduct. But the law on inheritance tax in particular, and tax in general, is enormously complicated, and the revenue will often not give you those allowances unless you ask for them. You have to claim them. So if you don't know they're there, you don't know that. So what we do is to look at those type of things. So an example would be if someone came to me because someone had passed away and I was to wind up their affairs, I would be able to tell them, well, on top of the obvious this and this, actually we can legitimately claim this and that because the government allows us to do that. And going back to the previous point, and perhaps we can elaborate on later, but in February of this year, the Treasury, such as the situation with the complexity of inheritance tax that got a lot more complicated actually last year, has asked the Office for Tax Simplification, and that's a real department in case you're wondering, to review inheritance tax and see what we can do to simplify things, because there's that acknowledgement at that top level that it is very complicated. And watch this space. We're waiting for the outcome of that, possibly by the next budget in the autumn.
Okay. Obviously a question that is not loaded in any way. What are you seeing day to day at Thursfields when your clients come in? What's the most common sort of question that crops up the most?
So we get a lot of questions actually currently about care funding, which really interplays on a number of different issues. And I know my colleague Tracy was actually over a couple of months ago and elaborated a bit further. But often people do come and they think about lifetime planning. And what we sort of find is that there is this thing out there called Google, apparently. People go online and have a bit of a read.
Crumbs.
Which is great because it's a source of information, but at the same time you've got to be careful about what you read and you've got to qualify that. And sometimes people will come to me because they will have read something, and if I didn't know something about something, I'd do the same. I'd Google it. But it's to actually qualify what they've read versus their own situation and whether it's applicable, and actually that they got the whole story. So just one example, there's a rule that if you give an asset away, and then you live for 7 years after you've given that asset away, so made a gift of some of your capital that you own, it goes outside of your estate for tax purposes. But you've got to be careful in the way that you make that gift and all the situations. So that's one of the common ones we hear, along with things like, should I put my house in my trust, into a trust? Should I give my house to my children? These sorts of things. But ultimately, it depends on the individual circumstances. What works for one person won't necessarily work for another. So, unfortunately, with this type of thing, the way we are at the moment, before any kind of simplifications implemented, if it ever is, we're in a situation where we just have to advise clients, on a case-by-case basis and see what's right for them, because it's not going to be a blanket, one size fits all answer.
And of course, if people come across to Thursfields and they may initially make an appointment with you, you might then put them on to other specialists in your team that could help them even more.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have a number of colleagues in the office in central Solihull who can help with all these different things. So sometimes, as part of a planning, clients might come to see me to do their wills, and we might have discussion about property and property ownership. We've got a vibrant residential property department who can assist with completing that transaction. If there's other circumstances, perhaps there's matrimonial issues, we've got matrimonial family law colleagues. And then, as I mentioned earlier, typically the care question comes up a lot and is coming up more often. And Tracy, my colleague, advises on that area. So within the four walls of the office, we've got a lot of specialists who can help, and we do work together quite often. But even beyond that, we work with partner organisations outside of Thursfields, so chartered financial advisors and planners, because sometimes for a client really to get all the answers. You do need to draw on other professions, be it accountants, financial advisors, so on and so forth. And we've got people that we work with. We can recommend and point in that direction if needs be as well.
Okay, right. It is 17 minutes past 6 here on the 14th of August. If you are joining us live, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to get in touch with us here at the station. We're going to play a little bit of music now, and then we'll come back and we'll start some of the featured content that Edward has been working on over the last month or so since we last caught up with him. In the news, we hear that Aretha Franklin is not too well at the moment over in America. So we are playing some Aretha Franklin, Thinking About You.
Fed up with condensation every morning and hate that yucky mould patch in the bathroom? It's time to contact EnviroVent. They've helped tackle mould and condensation dampness in over 1 million homes, just like yours. To find out more and to book a free home survey, visit envirovent.com, because air matters.
Solihullradio.com.
Stagecoach Solihull teaches skills
in drama, singing and dance.
But these skills don't just vanish when the curtain falls.
They're skills for life, stretching imaginations and improving literacy. For a career in the arts, learning new skills, or just having fun.
So visit our website.
www.stagecoach.co.uk/Solihull.
Stagecoach Solihull. Skills for the arts.
Skills for life.
Yeah!
The Fireplace and Stove Centre, 1204 Stratford Road, Hall Green. Specialists in wood-burning stoves, gas and electric fires with over 50 live displays in the showroom. Come in and experience your new fireplace solutions. Call 0121 777 85 85 for more details.
You're listening to Solihull Radio.
Indian Dream on Dove House Parade, Solihull's premier family-run restaurant offering authentic Indian and Bangladeshi cuisine with fresh ingredients and creative chefs. They can provide bespoke dining experiences, eat in or take away. 0121 704 9058.
Thank you very much for joining us here on Solihull Radio. My name is Geoff O'Brien. It is 23 minutes past 6 here in central Solihull from our new studios based in Touchwood, if you are around in the Solihull town centre. We will shortly be putting our marketing and our branding out so that you'll be able to see where our studio is, because currently it's a little bit hidden. Right, some people have been texting in and getting in touch saying our stream is not currently working via the Alexa app, the Alexa devices or the TuneIn Radio app. We are aware of this. And I urge you all just to go to solihullradio.com and press play. Just for now, until I get home this evening and do some more coding, which will allow it to be broadcast via multiple devices. And that is my fault. I'm sorry, everybody. If you just go across to solihullradio.com, click where it says click here to listen, big blue button, and you will be able to hear our live output. But obviously, you're already doing that because I'm talking to you. What I'll do is, whilst Edward is going through some of the featured content that we are podcasting with this broadcast this evening, I will do a quick tweet and do some social media just to make sure everyone is listening in the right place. Edward, where would you like to start with the featured content here on hashtag Legal Hour?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, this is a fairly complex and lengthy topic. So I want to keep it fairly straightforward, maybe go over some bits in sort of some bite-sized chunks, really, just a bit of information to impart on your listeners that may be of interest, of help, maybe learn something wasn't aware of before. So I thought we'd sort of carry on really a little bit, elaborate slightly further upon what I said before about the basics. So I've discussed really what inheritance tax is, when it's payable, a basic typical calculation, but just to really delve into it a little bit more, you know, what can we say about it? Really what you're looking at in terms of the calculation, it's something after someone's passed away, it's the executor's responsibility to correctly report inheritance tax. They've got to ascertain all the assets and liabilities of the estate, claim any allowances, and that then gives them a figure upon which to pay tax. It's also important to look at the situation of the individual that's passed away. So if you're what we call domiciled in England and Wales, what that means is that your estate is liable for inheritance tax on your worldwide assets. So if you were born in this country, let's say, and you lived here all your life, you've paid taxes, but you may have acquired a property, say in Spain, a retirement property or a flat, something like that. When you go, on the basis you are domiciled at death in England and Wales, your property overseas will be liable for inheritance tax in the UK. At this juncture, I should say, if you're in that situation when you're dealing with assets and tax cross-border, it's a really good time to get some specialist advice, because it does get complicated. And again, on that word domicile, not to go into it too far, but again, it's critical to get advice on that as well, because you can be in a bit of bother if you get that wrong. So we've talked about the initial calculation. What about other things that we can consider? I touched on earlier, it not only depends how much money you have or what your estate is worth when you die, but who does it go to? So are there people that we can leave assets to in our wills whereby we give this money to these individuals after we're gone, and we don't pay tax on that money, so they receive it without a deduction of tax. So the obvious two are spouses and civil partners. You can give to your spouse or civil partner free of tax whatever you want during your lifetime or upon your death. Registered charities as well, another one. Those types of individuals and legal entities, and they don't render a tax charge. So this is sort of linking a little bit to the previous show I did back in, I think it was February, talking about will writing. It's important to make wills because you give then certainty as to who is getting what, and then it's almost the starting point to that planning discussion if you are in a position where you may be liable to tax. So at this juncture, a couple of stats. Inheritance tax. So if you look at the last tax year, HMRC received a record amount of inheritance tax, £5.2 billion, which is a lot of money. There's no getting around that. But interestingly, inheritance tax itself is only a minority of the actual full tax receipts the revenue receives. So of all the tax receipts the revenue receives from all types of taxation, it's less than 1% of that. And also in terms of estates, so people that pass away, only about 5% of estates are subject to inheritance tax. But I suppose the message on this point of view is that it's an upward trend. So although we've got some new allowances, which I might talk about later on, the number of estates being liable to inheritance tax is going up, and the simple reason for that is that the allowances that were given by the government have not kept pace with the rise in the value of people's estates, primarily property values. So if you look at average house prices wherever you may reside, there's quite a few areas, and particularly a few around here, where you're going to be over that initial narrow band of 325,000. So it's something that actually is affecting more people, and not necessarily just people that you could say, inverted commas, rich individuals. Actually, by virtue of living in a certain area your whole life, you've seen your value of your property shoot up in value. You're still the same person doing the same things, receiving the same income, but all of a sudden you're sitting on this asset which now is liable to tax. So it really has the potential to affect a lot more people going forward.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, in terms of at the station, 075 64 30 30 64, or you can call us via our new landline number. It's 70 40 185. And if you're outside of the Birmingham area, by all means, just put 0121 in front of it there. And if you want to get in touch via email, if you've got a question about inheritance tax or future planning, because don't forget, Edward is also experts in all types of future planning. He did list them for me as we sat down this evening. But just get in touch and see if Solihull Radio can help in any way. So, right, let's have a little look here. We have got some tracks lined up for you. And after, when we come back, we've got one of our correspondents, our Knoll and Dorridge correspondent, Jackie, will be getting in touch with us and letting us know what's going on locally. So here is an absolute classic from Seal.
Graying tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug that's the high and not the pill. But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become alive, and the light that you shine can't be seen? I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. much a man can tell me, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain, baby. To me, you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become a large and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. There is so much a man can tell me, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. To me, you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny. Now won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become a large and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I can feel you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Yes, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave.
Kiss from a Rose by Seal, of course, one of the absolute classics. Love that track. Right, as promised, fresh before she goes out for her evening meal, it is Jackie. Jackie, how are you?
Oh, hello, everybody. Have people been missing the old woman?
Well, you have got that reputation now here at the station.
Being an old woman?
No, not at all. You know what I mean. How have you been? It's been a long time since we've heard from you over there in Knoll. What's been happening out there for you?
Well, we've all been baking, obviously.
Sure.
It's the action. What was I always talking about? Parking.
Yes, parking in Knoll.
And people who read the local papers will know that we've had a Tory councillor sort of hand in his notice as a Tory, and he's now an independent, sitting as an independent because of all the problems with the parking.
Wow. Is this something that we've started here at Solihull Radio?
Well, it was started well before I said it, because everybody's been clucking in Knoll for...
Oh, I'm glad you said that correctly.
Yes. Yes.
And is this the parking round by the Tesco store or whatnot?
Well, they're putting a charge now on the car park.
Right.
So you've got free for half an hour, and then it's 20p. And of course, the people who work on the high street, you know, or the butchers and the business people who want people to use the high street are up in arms saying, well, half an hour doesn't give you any time at all. I mean, 20p is not much, but I think it's the principle.
I know what you're saying.
It doesn't solve the sort of people parking all around the green
Hmm.
and all down the road. So
I know what you're saying.
anyway, Mr. Ribeiro was not pleased, and he has resigned his post.
As a Conservative councillor?
Yeah, he's now an independent.
Sitting as an independent and then presumably up for re-election next time round.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So have you eaten much cake?
I have eaten quite a bit of cake.
Excellent.
No, I eat a lot.
I know. You, coffee and cake is you.
Is me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite anal about my coffee.
I know you are, yeah. Now, for the other listeners tuned into Solihull Radio this evening, welcome. Jackie and I did meet up a week or so ago, and we did try some different coffees, didn't we?
We did, and I have viewed the new offices.
Oh, of course, yes. Jackie is one of the lucky ones
I have seen it.
along with Ed.
Yeah.
To be invited into the new offices.
It's a select few, isn't it, Jackie?
Oh, it is. It's very handy.
And now, should we mention what we're devising for the new offices?
No.
Okay.
Hold fire.
Hold fire. Okay, won't mention it at all.
I mean, I've got big news, but I can't divulge it.
Okay.
I might tell you what it is when I see you later in the week.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that now.
Anyway, back to Noel.
Back to Noel. Tell me what, because you are our Noel and Dorridge
I am the Noel correspondent.
Yep.
And everybody else is just... So we've got the parking problem, and we've got all the roads have been dug up.
Right.
Well, we had, a few weeks ago, we had all the high street dug up in the middle of the night, so people who were living on or just off that high street had no sleep for the night. So that went down well.
I bet.
Where I live, Longdon Road, I have to now drive 2 miles all the way round to get into the village, and that's going to go on for a couple of months.
Oh. Oh, dear.
Oh, we're not happy with the road.
You're not happy, are you?
I'm not.
Poor
I'm
things.
not happy either about Bentley Heath losing their greengrocer.
Oh. What is going on?
So you have to get your sort of vegetables. You can get them from the butcher and a few in the co-op in Bentley Heath. But they have lovely plants in there as well.
Oh, dear.
And it's now a barber's.
Right, and this is local news brought to you by our correspondent in the field.
Yes.
Oh.
And so we're quite sad about the loss. I mean, it's local people who haven't got cars. And it's loss of these, local shops. And it's quite sad. But I suppose with Sainsbury's just down the road in Dorridge.
That's right.
That's what happens.
That is what happens. Edward is here this evening from Thursfields, here in central Solihull. You've been listening to the featured content that we're going to podcast a little bit later on. Any questions, any ideas for Edward? We've had some questions in. Tony, thank you very much for your email, by the way. I have posed your questions to Edward, and he'll come back to you in a second. Any future planning questions from you, Jackie?
I have no idea what the girls will do with this property when I'm gone.
Oh, you see, now this is...
Well, I do, because one lives in Australia, the one's down south.
Right.
Anyway, it'll be Ken's problem, not mine, because he's planning on outliving me.
Oh, is he? Right.
He is, and then he'll have to get another woman in to do all the jobs I usually do.
Well done, Ken.
He's no fool, is he?
Yeah, he's ticked that off the list, well done. Oh, great stuff. Listen, I will catch up with you a bit later on in the week.
Yes.
Is there anything that I can play you this evening?
Well, considering where I'm going tonight...
Oh, where are you off to tonight?
I might be having a curry. So what about Donna Summer?
Donna Summer.
I'm going to have some hot stuff
Ooh.
later this evening.
Right, wait there. Let me just sort out my systems here. How's that?
Oh, brilliant. No stripping off. They can see you on the high street.
Okay.
Okay.
See you soon, Jackie.
Okay, bye, Jack.
Bye.
Darling,
solihullradio.com.
That's right, you are listening to Solihull Radio. My name is Geoff O'Brien, and we are here up until about 8 o'clock this evening. If you have any requests or anything you would like us to play for you, or messages, dedications, or anything along those lines, just get in touch with us here at the station. There's a couple of ways you can do it. If you're looking at solihullradio.com now, which presumably you are, because we are having some technical issues with our TuneIn app via Alexa and Google Home Assistants, all of the contact details are in front of you. 075 64 30 30 64 gets you a text. You can telephone us, 0121 70 40 185, or you can do what Tony's done. And Tony has sent us an email, studio@solihullradio.com. Question for you, Ed, is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Here it comes. Most people want to be able to give the maximum inheritance to our beneficiaries. However, as we're talking about tax after death, it's a delicate subject. And Tony says, is it a good to start mentioning the 7-year rule? What are your thoughts and advice on bringing the subject of IHT up with some loved ones?
Yeah, I think I know where Tony's coming from in this question. And it's a good question, actually, because one of the best things, I suppose, from a tax planning perspective that you can do is give your assets away and live 7 years. But that is not necessarily something that everyone can do, has the luxury of having assets they can readily give away that will make an impact in reducing their estate, and also then continue to live without that asset. So for most of us, I suppose, our main asset, if we're fortunate enough to own a property and some equity in that property, it's typically the main asset. But naturally, if you give your property away, you're on the streets unless you've got somewhere else to bunk up. So it is a sensitive subject, because you're talking about loved ones, you're talking about relationships, the particularities of those individual relationships, and money, and possibly bereavement later on as well. And quite often, it's not something that, if you don't talk about this stuff every day, is a comfortable conversation. So I try and look at it in quite a straightforward manner, and going back to what Tony said and broaching that. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to inheritance tax planning, making gifts, it's down to that individual who owns those assets to make those decisions. There's nothing wrong, with having conversation with people and, recommending that people just seek independent and proper advice. And that's what I'd say to most people in that situation, suggest going to see someone to get some advice about that, because there are things that you can do, but really they have a significant impact if done wrong, or if done without really considering all the consequences. And a worst case scenario, you do something like give a major asset away, thinking if you live 7 years it falls outside your estate for tax, but because of a technicality or some reason you hadn't thought of, actually that doesn't work in the end, and you can be hit with trying to do something to make it work, and then waiting when it's sort of too late and it hasn't actually worked, and you might actually be worse off in terms of a tax bill than if you had done nothing. And there are actually specific circumstances where I've sort of seen that happen, and it can happen. So yeah, but bottom line, I think it's good to have conversations if you're comfortable having conversation with people about this, but ultimately everyone it's the person who owns the assets that's got to make those decisions and got to be capable to decide that in the end. But absolutely, it's one to seek advice on.
And we can do that via your team over at Thursfields, getting in touch with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
0121 624 4000, and of course you can use that Google search engine to find your office contact details and your websites.
Yeah, thursfields.co.uk.
There you go. Absolute, as simple as that. Thank you very much, Tony, for getting in touch via studio@solihullradio.com. I hope that helped, and it was a really good way of sort of starting that subject of having a chat about what happens, especially with the things of bereavement to be dealing with as well. If you are enjoying Solihull Radio, why don't you get in touch with us? Tell us a little bit more about what you would like us to programme for you. If there are any ideas or any things that you would like us to add, of course, we are now working primarily with our partners here at Thursfields Solicitors in Solihull, and Touchwood, of course, Touchwood Shopping Centre here in central Solihull, who have partnered up with Solihull Radio to offer you our broadcasting services. And of course, we've now got the offices and studios that we can use. In fact, we have multiple studios here now, so not just one. See what I've done there? I'm going to play some music. We are going to get ready for the news, which is coming up on the hour. And then after that, we've got our Solihull and Shirley correspondent that we'll be talking to. But he's just sent me a text, would you believe? And I'm going to tell you exactly what it says. Just to not embarrass him, but just to let you know what we talk about just before we go live on air. He said, Geoff, what I'll do is I'll call in after the Archers. There you go, you see. So he's currently listening, he will be listening to the Archers at 7 till 7:15, so you will know after 7:15 we will have the messages and all the information, local information about our Solihull and Shirley area. We've got some information coming through on our emails as well about what's happening down at the Artric Centre over the coming months. There's a lot of comedy coming up at the Artric Centre, and I'll go through some of that with you if you are a visitor of that centre. But I'm going to play you some amazingly lovely James Taylor, just taking us up towards the news, and then we'll have a little bit more of a chat.
Do me wrong, but do me right. Tell me lies, but hold me tight. Save your goodbyes for the morning light, but don't let me be lonely tonight. Say goodbye and say hello. It's sure enough good to see you, but it's time to go. Don't say yes, but please don't say no. I don't want to be lonely tonight. Go away then, damn ya. Go on and do as you please, yeah. You ain't gonna see me getting down on my knees. I'm undecided and your heart's been divided. You've been turning my world upside down. Do me wrong, do me right now, baby. Go on and tell me lies, but hold me tight. Save your goodbyes for the morning light, but don't let me be lonely tonight. I don't want to be lonely tonight. No, no, I don't want to be lonely tonight. I don't want to be lonely tonight.
Lovely bit of James Taylor there. Don't Let Me Be Lonely Tonight. Well, introduced to me a long time ago by a guy called Alan Gruner, one of my all-time favourite bass-playing colleagues from a previous life of mine. And he said, you need to check this song out. And I did. And it is now in my vocabulary of James Taylor tracks. Really nice. Right. Have you been to the Artric Centre? If you have, you will probably know how brilliant it is. And the lady that runs a lot of our press releases here at the station has come up with all of the things that are coming up in September. And it starts, would you believe, and I apologise for this, it starts on the 14th of September at 8 o'clock. If it's basically called the all-new Scummy Mummies Show. It's for 18 plus. Sketches, songs that celebrate the more trickier side of parenting, let's say. Great night for mums and dads in brackets. And like I say, it's 18 plus if you think about that. If you're reaching for the wine at tea time, then this is the comedy show for you. Now, do you remember off the telly, there was a guy I haven't seen him a great deal on the television recently, but his name is Dr. Phil Hammond. He's a journalist, broadcaster and comedian, and his latest show is called Happy Birthday NHS, and that's on the 19th of September. Nye Bevan's beautiful baby is 70 this year. Dr. Phil, charts the course of the NHS from 48 as long as she lasts. Recommended for ages 14 and above. And then we start getting into some comedy. I won't put you on the spot, Ed, in terms of your comedy and joke knowledge, but there is a brilliant one-liner comic called Gary Delaney, and he comes into the Artrix on the 20th of September, and that is for ages 16 and above. Gary Delaney's show on the 20th. The Barnstormers comedy show on the 22nd. Stephen Bailey, Duncan Oakley and Andy White, and you have to be over the age of 18 for that. Pete Furman is a comedy magician and TV regular. Hot from the Edinburgh Fringe, he comes to the Artrix with his show. Marvels on Wednesday the 26th at 7:30, and you have to be over the age of 14 for that one. So if you are available for an amazing magic show. And finally, I've got a comedian called Scott Gibson, Friday the 28th of September. Big, bald, bearded Glaswegian brings his show called Anywhere But Here to Bromsgrove, the only West Midlands date on the UK tour, and you have to be over the age of 16 for that. So if I can urge you to go to this website, it is artrix.co.uk, and find out all about the month of September and all of the different comedy shows and things along those lines that you can access. I heartily recommend them to you. Hopefully you've enjoyed our press release for the Artrix Centre. And like I say, artrix.co.uk, and find out what you can. Was that a good roundup of what's happening in the month of September, Ed?
I think so. Yeah, lots on.
Lots on.
Yeah.
And of course, over the next few weeks, and I'll tell you this in confidence, we've got some rather large meetings coming up with, let's say, entertainment providers about 6 miles to the east of us.
That silences my brain.
Oh,
trying to work it out and failing.
About 6 miles outside of...
And eyes of emerald green. Your smile is like a breath of spring. Your voice is soft like summer rain. And I cannot compete with you, Jolene. He talks about you in his sleep, and there's nothing I can do to keep from crying when he calls your name, Jolene. And I can easily understand how you could easily take my man, but you don't know what he means to me, Jolene. Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my man. Jolene, 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 please don't take him just because you can. You could have your choice of men, but I could never love again. He's the only one for me, Jolene. I had to have this talk with you. My happiness depends on you, and whatever you decide to do, Jolene.
Welcome back to Solihull Radio. My name is Geoff O'Brien, and we are here with Edward Jones from Thursfields Solicitors over in central Solihull. And every month we have #Legal Hour here on Solihull Radio. where one of a team of solicitors comes and sits the other side of the desk and answers questions and gives us what we call featured content for our podcasts, so people can download and listen at their leisure if they are interested in any of the legal topics that we talk about. And of course, tonight is, we are focusing on inheritance tax. There's lots of other, areas of specialism that Edward is, au fait with, one of them being wills. And we've spoken about, not writing a will on a piece of napkin in the bar one night. That's not the right way of doing it.
Probably not the best way to go about it, no.
But legally, it's okay, isn't it?
It's possible.
It is possible.
Yeah.
I remember us having a chat about that.
Yeah.
So Edward's areas of specialism: wills, probate, future planning, estates, and of course inheritance tax, which he is here having a chat about for our featured content this evening. Where else would you like to take our discussion?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably worth having a bit of a chat about some of the changes with inheritance tax. And actually, back in last April, we had a really significant change that's going to mean that we've actually got some more allowances that the government's given us and that we can claim when someone passes away. So just to go back really to the reliefs that we have for inheritance tax. So we've got our no rate band, which is our principal relief. So as I said earlier, the first £325,000 of an estate is not subject to tax. You're paying at 40% over that. And then back in from 2007, actually, it's been possible to pass unused no rate band between spouses or civil partners. So quite often a married couple up until last April would have had possibly up to 650,000. And back in last April, we had the introduction of a new relief called the residence no rate band. And some listeners may recall that there was a promise from the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, I think it was Mr. Osborne, about £1 million of inheritance tax relief. And so we don't quite have £1 million yet, but we're getting towards there, and we may potentially have that in a couple more tax years. So just to sort of explain how we get there, and as always the devil's in the detail a little bit. So we've each got £325,000 as a potential allowance. If you're a married couple or a civil partnership, you can pass unused allowance of that to the other upon the second death. So that's, say, 650. So how do we get to this magic million in a few years' time? So it's the residence no rate band. So for deaths after 6th of April 2017, it is possible to claim an extra allowance towards claiming money off a tax liability in an estate. And this extra amount is currently £125,000 for each individual, and it's going to rise up to £175,000 potential each extra allowance for each spouse or civil partner. So if you do the magic calculation, that's 325, 325, 175, 175 by 2020-21, you're going to potentially have that magic £1 million for a married couple or spouses or civil partners. So although, as we discussed earlier, we've had this sharp increase in house prices over the last few years, and the inheritance tax rates haven't kept pace with it, this has been sort of something to placate that a little bit. The headline, however, with this is that it's not a straightforward allowance that you would just necessarily get as a given, like with your normal no rate band, unless you happen to use it up. For this, it's more complicated. So first of all, you essentially, it's based on what we would call a residence, so somewhere that you've lived at and you owned at some point in your life, passing to direct descendants, so children, grandchildren, so on and so forth. And there's a few other classes of individuals that it can pass to, which are a little bit unusual when you consider normal succession rules. So things like stepchildren can actually benefit as a beneficiary from this allowance. So that's really the headline, is we've got this increasing threshold that's bringing us up from your 650 back before last April, and over the next couple of years we're going to be up to £1 million potential allowance. Now, a couple of things to sort of comment on here, if anyone is potentially in this sort of bracket as a combined estate of, say, a married couple or a civil partnership in particular, although you can as a single individual claim some of this allowance, is first of all reviewing what's in place already. So before 2007, a particular type of wills were very popular, and they were called discretionary no rate band trust wills. these wills, we would still write these in certain circumstances, but they were used back in the day for often primarily tax planning reasons. And with the new legislation we have, it isn't actually always necessary to maintain these kind of trusts. And in some ways, it can actually be a bit of a pain to have these kind of trusts. Sometimes they're still worthwhile, but I would tend to look at them not really from tax planning reasons now. I'd look at it in terms of protecting beneficiaries. So first message, review existing wills, particularly those made before October 2007, because, as I said earlier, with this allowance, the devil's in the detail as to how you give and at what point you give and what assets you give to particular beneficiaries and who they are. So lots of complications where advice should be sought. The second one is, if you're fortunate enough, let's say in a couple of years, to have an estate on the second death in a married couple or a civil partnership over £1 million, and you go over that magic £1 million mark, you can actually start to get that relief taken away from you again. So this is the point where lifetime planning can come in along with planning for once you've gone with your wills, and the two are sort of intrinsically linked. So when we see clients, we talk about relationships, beneficiaries, we talk about assets, the type of assets. We see if a client would benefit from advice which we're not qualified to give, so financial advice, and we can refer them on and work together quite often with financial planners to really map out someone's future. So get the wills in place, make sure we can claim all the allowances and the new allowances that the revenue have given us, and then combine that with some ongoing planning, perhaps with a financial advisor, is really a good solution. And this is something we look to do quite regularly. So not to sort of be alarmist, but just to be honest. I mean, it is important to review current wills in this situation. They're not always going to be a problem, but the potential maximum that you could lose out as a married couple or a civil partnership, so the extra tax that you could pay, is up to £140,000. So the cost of a bit of planning and a couple of wills, it's a good investment, I think, in terms of making sure that you qualify from these allowances. And it goes back to what I said right at the beginning of the show. This isn't about being clever, trying to do anything untoward. It's about using what we are given as individuals by our government to claim these allowances. It's being savvy, it's being sensible. The unfortunate thing with this area of law is it is complicated. Watch this space, let's see if it gets any simpler. But right now, really, it's something that you need to see an expert about based on your individual circumstances, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all rule, and you've got to be careful.
Thank you very much. Right, question. What type of assets are subject to probate? From Marcus.
So this sounds like more of an estate administration question, but absolutely let's touch on this as well. So probate is the legal document that gives authority to an executor to what we call prove a will. So you're named an executor in the will. When that person dies, the buck stops with you to deal with everything from the moment that person dies. And quite often you will need probate to deal with certain assets in the estate. So I think the question was, what assets are probate required for? So typical examples of where you might need probate would be if there is a house, real property in the name of the person that's passed away, then you would need a grant of probate so that your conveyancing solicitor could sell or transfer that asset. Shareholdings is another one. Unless they're very minimal in value, most registrars would want to see a grant of probate so you can deal with shareholdings in a estate, so typical FTSE 100 shareholdings that individuals may have. And then other than that, you often can look at the value of an asset. So typically banks and building societies on the high street, they will each have their own individual limits, and they will say, let's say you walk into a branch because you have to inform the branch that a loved one's passed away and you present them with a death certificate. They will be able to tell you at that point if they need to see probate or not. And over the years, these allowances have actually been going up, and you can now claim more than you used to without presenting a grant of probate. But by the time you're getting 30, 40, 50,000, they're likely going to want to see a grant. So it always depends on the situation. And this is the thing with legal stuff, basically. It's important to get advice because each situation is different. And sometimes, people do call in the office and speak to me and ask these kind of questions, and it can sometimes be a really simple answer.
Mm-hmm.
But at least if you ask, then you know the position.
Okay, next one. Karen, who is from Knoll. My mum has been left some money by her aunt. How long does it take for her to get the inheritance usually? Also, hi, Ed and Geoff. Oh, hello.
Hi.
How long does it take?
Yeah, this is probably one of my FAQs, frequently asked
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Yep. So, again, there's not really a straightforward answer. It depends on the practicalities. So let's put ourselves in the position of the executors of the person who's passed away. So they've passed away. What do we need to do? We need to value the assets. If you've got inheritance tax to pay, your obligations for valuation are a little bit stricter, really, because the revenue has to agree to those. There's a slightly different reporting procedure. So to value all the assets, if you're doing it professionally, you're talking anywhere from a few weeks to 3 or 4 months. You've got to apply for your grant of probate. Let's say you need probate to sell a property to get the cash to pay the beneficiary, or you need to get probate to pass to your bank to get the cash from the bank. You've then got on top of that 1 to 4 months, maybe another month or two for the application to go through, for the revenue to agree the figures, and then you've got then to be in a position and deal with any other legal formalities to actually distribute that. And depending on the type of beneficiary, that could potentially also make a difference. So if you're a residuary beneficiary, that means you get the residue of the estate, so everything that's left after cost, tax, expenses and other legacies. If you're a what we call a pecuniary or cash legatee, you might get a fixed sum, so £10,000. You may receive that before everyone else receives their residue, because by definition you don't know what the full residue is until you've paid all the costs. So it does depend on the circumstances, but as a very rough answer, I would say, and again, this is from me in my professional opinion, if I was doing things in a professional capacity, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, I would say you're looking from anywhere from 5, 6 to 12 months, roughly speaking.
There you go. Thanks for your text. We've probably got enough time for one more question. Free legal advice is great. Thanks, Helen. Do you pay inheritance tax if the deceased has lived abroad?
Now then.
No, hold on a second.
Going back to what I said earlier, actually. So what we're looking at when it comes to inheritance tax is that word domicile. And this is a very particular term. And an easy way of sort of describing it, and again, let's throw that caveat in there, always get legal advice and check your circumstances. But it is almost describing where would that individual, where was their homeland, where were they based, where were they intending to spend the rest of their days. Were they just going for a month or two abroad to work with a plan to come back, and so on and so forth. That in itself is a whole other topic. But let's say that we'll assume a hypothetical situation that individual was domiciled in England and Wales. Now, if you're domiciled in England and Wales at death, your whole worldwide estate is subject to inheritance tax, regardless of where it is. So if you have other assets over abroad, wherever they may be, the revenue want to hear about those, they want to have them valued, and they want the tax on them. If you're not domiciled in the UK, though, and in another hypothetical example where you may be you're not a UK domicile, not domiciled in England and Wales, but you have some assets that are situated here, then you are only paying inheritance tax on your UK situated assets. So depends on the details. Again, good one to seek advice on.
Head over to Thursfields in the centre of Solihull. Right, I am going to play you a very cleverly thought out track, just taking us up to our messages from our sponsors, and then hopefully we might be able to get in touch with our Shirley and Solihull correspondent, but we'll see if the Archers has finished, because he tends to phone us after the Archers. We'll be right back after this track.
limit one more time. Take it to the limit. Take it to the limit. Take it to the limit one more time.
And I've missed being broadcasted.
Yeah, well, excellent stuff. How have you been since we last spoke? Because it's over a month now.
It is. I've been a busy man.
Go ahead.
Unbelievable. Oh, I tell you, I mean, things. Let's just say I don't want to say that I've been saving up every little bit of news for the time I get back on the show. And
Yep.
I'll take a deep breath and talk for the next half hour.
Go ahead.
I won't, but I might do. You never know. Anyway, what has been happening? Well, I've been busy. I've been involved with the Area 35 Roundtable. We had a massive garden project which we were involved with. I may have mentioned it before last month.
Mm-hmm.
Before
the studio move.
Before the studio moved. Oh, by the way, before I continue, can I say one thing? Your Facebook page has still got the old number on.
Oh,
777-8410.
Right, you're an
that
absolute...
needs to be updated.
Thank you very much for... Listen, I'm trying to remember everywhere where I've written the number down.
No problem.
And it's tricky for me to remember. You know what it's like nowadays.
Well, it's always handy that I can remind you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. So we've been busy. With Roundtable Children's Wish and other groups, we've managed to transform a garden for a little girl who's quite severely disabled, and she has unspecified diagnosed syndrome, which means she has everything wrong with her.
Oh, crumbs.
And and so we've been her mum. Her mum is obviously she got two daughters. The younger daughter isn't well, and so we as a group and when I mean Area 35, I mean all the round tables in West Midlands. So we had Shirley, Solihull, Nolan Dorridge, Ulster and Stratford, Moseley, City of Birmingham, Tamworth, and Bromsgrove. All the lads there and all the different groups, and Coleshill as well. Everyone's helped out. We've transformed a garden that was 8 foot high of briars, and it's a fantastic space which the children can use. There's a big trampoline in there, and it's just wonderful, and a massive it's like a summer house, but coloured in the style of Mr. Tumble. She loves Mr. Tumble.
Brilliant.
Because the little one, she goes to Reynolds Cross School.
Right, local school, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's all local, and it's been wonderful, and even better still, our old friend Brad Parks, we know well.
No,
Brad
we know
Parks,
very well here at the station.
Oh, God bless that man. Yes, Brad Parks. He chipped in with the 25 and 25 campaign, which is just wonderful from Solihull Specsavers, and he helped out as well. We were very stuck actually for the need of a skip, and he just said, "Grant, how much?" He just paid for it like that. You know, the guy is a star, and it's amazing that people say if you don't ask, you don't get. But sometimes it's like you feel, you might feel a bit awkward about asking things. But honestly, people like Brad, the man's an absolute star, and he's helped us so much, and so has everyone in Area 35, and we've had such support, and it's been great crack.
Brilliant stuff. Well, many congratulations to you and the team.
Yes, well, it's to be honest with you, I was in the garden today actually, I'm just finishing it off, and I was 99% finished. Tomorrow myself and my son Sean, we're going to plant the garden tomorrow. We've got lots of lavenders and stuff and other plants to plant tomorrow in the garden. And once that's done, that's it. It's finished.
Wow.
So we are.
Well done, you.
Oh yes. So that's really put me in a really good mood.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my. I have to also thank my very understanding wife.
Sure.
Because the thing is, I spent most weekends down at this garden, and when I say weekends, I get on at 6:30 in the morning. I finish at 6 in the evening.
Full days.
And she wouldn't see me, but she's very understanding. So God bless her, and also it's been the kind of community initiative that has just reinvigorated my love of everywhere and everyone, But then, as you know, Geoff, I've always been for the many, not for the few,
That's right.
But that's me. Anyway, that's what I've been up to. What else have I been up to? My Year 6s got the best results in Birmingham in their stats.
Well done, you.
Yeah. For the little school I work at, with the disadvantages my children have been, beset with, it's wonderful, and they work so hard, and so God bless them. And they're all at the secondary school, and I'm missing them already, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, let's see what else have I been doing. I'll be honest with you, I have been delighted with the reinvestment in Shirley High Street.
Oh, tell me more.
It has been wonderful. The potholes, there are fewer.
Excellent.
Now maybe it's just because they've been drier, whatever else, and whatever. But there has been an improvement in some of the potholes anyway.
Good.
And also many of the shops. And I'll tell you this much: the shop. Since I've lived in Shirley, I lived in Shirley 18 years, Geoff, this year.
Right.
18 years, and Arts and Flowers. You know Arts and Flowers?
Halfway up.
Yeah, has been empty all that time.
18
Not
years.
anymore.
Wow.
Not anymore. There is going to be a craft ale emporium.
You can't imagine what I'm doing here in the studio.
Actually,
when's that?
No, please, come on! This is a family show.
I know, but I know, but what's going on?
The Craft Ale Emporium, and they have this group. They have little outlets, and only small little outlets, very exclusive, in Sutton Coldfields and what have you.
Right.
And so they're moving in there, and it's wonderful. Next door to them, there's another empty store, which has become the Women's Aid charity shop has moved from the top of the high street down next to there, which is great because it's much more central for them.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic charity to support. And where it was the Superdrug used to be, that's been taken over by the Works, and so that's happened. That's all there as well. Crust has become an Indian restaurant, which is fantastic, a Southern Indian restaurant. And the old M&S shop
on the top
top
corner,
by the Red Lion, that will eventually, at some stage, become an Argentine steak restaurant.
Oh.
So it's all happening.
Brilliant
and
stuff.
where let me think, where Crash Bang Wallop was, that's becoming I think it's a kitchen showroom.
Wow.
So that's something. And where Women's Aid has moved from the top there, that's becoming a window showroom or something like that. So it's all happening.
Brilliant.
It's all happening.
Now,
I'm really pleased about that.
Can I say something a little bit controversial for me?
Oh, be controversial by all means.
All of this is happening without a Shirley bid.
It is. And unfortunately, I mean, the thing is that, I don't know. The thing is, I'll just say it as I say it. Asda shot that down. And there's no two ways. You can't say anything else.
You see?
The Shirley bid was, most of the shops in Shirley were in support of Shirley bid, but Asda shot it down. And there's no two ways about it. They can't deny it. If they deny it, fine. If they say I'm being slanderous, fine, go for it. But the proof is there. It's down to them. They shot it down.
Right.
And
but look at the positivity that's happened.
Look at the positivity that's happened. But the thing is, look at what more we could have done if we'd had Shirley bid.
Had a bid.
You know. But there you go. But the thing is, Solihull bid is up and running, and they're going to go for that. And I know Brad Parks and Solihull Specsavers are well behind that. And I'm throwing my weight behind my considerable weight behind that too. So I think. But what I don't want to think is that Solihull gets the bid because they're a bigger place and whatever else. It's a shame. I'm sure Shirley bid will come up again, and next time it comes up, I just think it has to be a little bit better organised. And I think certain groups who block the bid will have to think about their community investment, and just it's more than just throwing a bit of money at this, that, and the other. It's about real community engagement, and it's the Shirley bid. Okay, it was shot down this time, but it won't be next time. I'm sure of that.
Cool.
All right. Let's see what else is there.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Ask away.
We've got Edward from Thursfields. Sitting directly opposite me in the new studios down here in Touchwood. And I was just wondering we had a question a little bit earlier. How would you broach the topic with the family on future planning and things along those lines?
I'm glad you asked me that.
How?
Because recently, my wife and I, we've actually had a will writer come to us, and we've gone through this.
Yeah.
And it's, I'll be honest with you, it takes your breath away, some of the permutations and some of the possible, the nuances of things that might happen.
Yeah.
For example, Geoff, I don't know, have you had a will written yet?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, good, right? Because I'm sure Edward will agree with me in this one. And the thing is, again, it's how people, how they voice the questions, whatever else. Some horrible scenario. You got to think. supposing, like I was asked, if my wife and I were killed in a car crash, would have the kids?
Yeah.
And I think, oh my goodness. And then you have to really think about this. Who do you know would be willing to take your children on? But again, because, like, for example, my wife said her sister would do it, but her sister lives in Canada, so therefore would there be problems with repatriating children from Britain to Canada?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, good gracious, and then the gentleman said, what about your family? He said, my family must be joking. I'm not sending them over to Ireland. God help us. No. So we're going to, if the worst happened, they will be staying here.
Right.
And there's other things as well, other questions. With regard to, when you die and the money is left between the three children. Okay, we have three children, as do you, okay?
Yeah.
What happens, the question then is, what happens if one of your children predeceases you? It's like, oh my God. And it's these questions you think, it kind of takes your breath away, but then you suddenly realize you have to consider this. So therefore, instead of the share going three ways, it'd have to go two ways, stuff like that. And they're difficult questions, but they're questions that we all have to understand. In the same way with regard to palliative care. For example, how much money can we leave to our loved ones as a gift to our spouse, so that when inheritance tax is paid, that the government doesn't take a big chunk out of what little we have,
Is that something, Ed, that's a common question that you see?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the chap who's come to see Coleman's asked some really pertinent questions of him and his family. I mean, and as you're saying, it's if you really stop and think about it. In a way, I'm exposed to this on a daily basis because of my job. I've been doing it for that long. But as you say, it's important to consider it. And the way I look at it really is, if I do a will for someone, for that individual person, guarantee you they're not going to see the benefit of that because they're going to be gone by definition. So it's about being unselfish and thinking things through. And the other thing I say to people is, at the end of the day, look, it's the number one thing you're going to put off to the back of a pile of jobs. We're all these busy lives. There's a long list of things to do.
Yeah.
Don't put it off. Get it done and forget about it. Have that discussion once. Really think about it. And it sounds like you've done just that. So good on you.
I'll be honest with you, Edward, our huge weight has been taken off our mind, off our shoulders. A huge weight, because I feel, having said that, it was only after my wife's sister said, oh, what? I'm having the kids. I said, just in case, But, she's fine with it now. But it was a bit of a shock when we first said, would you mind? She said, oh, okay, I suppose. She was, because she doesn't have any children of her own. She likes her nephews and nieces, don't get me wrong. But it's fine to see them and say, bye-bye, leave them with us. But we need to have them turn up on the doorstep and with their little suitcases and say, well, Mum and Dad are gone. That kind of thing. Although I'm making light of it, it is something that everyone should be considering.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it's the way I look at it, people think, oh, well, there's still this, some people are a bit superstitious. Oh, if I make my will, that's it, I'm finished. But actually, to me, it's quite life-affirming. You consider, take a bit of time to think about, if you weren't around, your loved ones, then just get on, enjoy yourself. Don't worry about it. It's done. File it away, but at least you're all good to go.
Indeed. Well, good to go. And that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. So to speak.
So to speak, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so to speak, indeed.
Coleman, it's been absolutely brilliant getting back in touch with
Geoff,
you.
It's been brilliant being back.
And I've changed some of the setup here at the studio.
By the way, I was great to hear Jackie earlier, by the way, a Noel correspondent. And so she's been in, has she? And I haven't.
Jackie and I, all will become clear, Coleman. Let me put it that way.
I see. Well, yeah, Jackie was talking about, she's going to be announcing some big news, and then you played Donna Summer Hot Stuff. What's she going to be, a stripper or something?
No. But the news will be announced, and there's a couple of meetings coming up towards the end of this week, just for us to finalise some details, and then we shall announce what's going on. And next time you are in Central Solihull,
indeed,
and you are over in the Touchwood Centre. You are more than welcome to come into the offices here.
Oh, wonderful. Seeing, of course, as it's school holidays,
That's right. More than welcome.
Wonderful.
And you can see the new studios.
Oh, fantastic. I might even bring in my ukulele.
Oh, I tell you, I might record you then.
That's a threat.
I might record you. Listen, can I play anything for you this evening?
Do you know what? Yes. I'm feeling. I know that the weather has been slightly changeable recently. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind, because I'm Irish. I love the rain, and so a song with regard to rain, something with a country and western feel. Rain,
country and western.
Yeah. So where
Stay there.
can find?
I'll rain. If I type in rain now.
Yeah, rain. Oh, it's Nancy Griffiths.
Yep.
Hey, good man.
How's that?
That's fantastic.
Take it easy, mate. I'll see you soon.
Good night, you know.
See ya.
Good night, Edward. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Sparkles like diamonds when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears. Once I had a love from the Georgia pines who only cared for me. I want to find that love of 22 here at 33. I've got a heart on my right and one on my left, and that suits my needs. No, the one I love is away out west, and he never will need me. So I wish it would rain and wash my face clean. I want to find some dark cloud to hide in here. Oh, love and a memory sparkles like diamonds when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears. I'm gonna pack up my two-step shoes and head for the Gulf Coast Plains. I wanna walk the streets of my own hometown where everybody knows my name. I wanna ride the waves down in Galveston when the hurricanes blow in. 'Cause that Gulf Coast, the water tastes sweet as wine when your heart's rolling home in the wind. And I wish it would rain and wash my face clean. I wanna find some dark cloud to hide in here. Oh, love and a memory sparkles like diamonds when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears when the diamonds fall. They burn like tears when the diamonds fall, darling. They burn like
And there you go. That was for Coleman this evening. Wasn't that brilliant? Coleman is such a wonderful fella. Does a lot of work for the community. And just basically keeps us up to date with all the things that are happening over there in Shirley High Street. Right, this is going to be the last sort of chunk from Edward from Thursfields. If you've just joined us, we've been chatting around the subject of inheritance tax this evening with #Legal Hour on Tuesday Thoughts with me, Geoff O'Brien, here on Solihull Radio. We hope you've enjoyed some of the content that we've put out there. All of the advice obviously will be available for you to listen to again via our podcast. And as soon as I've edited the elements out, I shall put it through as a featured content podcast on our Podbean app that you can get to via solihullradio.com. So it couldn't be simpler. I urge you to follow the station via the app of Podbean, which is a free download on both Android and iOS devices. So you will get the content delivered straight to your phone from all of the shows that we are putting out here via solihullradio.com. There's a couple of ways of getting in touch. 075 64 30 30 64 gets us a text straight into the station here if you have any questions or any requests for any of the presenters. You can give us a telephone call 70 40 185, or you can send us an email studio@solihullradio.com. Don't forget, check our social media feeds, Facebook and Twitter. Just type, and in fact Instagram. See, I've almost forgotten how we are so socially connected. Right then, Edward, last little bit from you. What else do you want to add to your featured content podcast?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the reliefs that are available, the basics of inheritance tax, sort of values you're looking at, some of the new changes, things that have happened over the last 10 years or so, why you should be looking at planning at the moment, what that planning looks like in a little bit. But I wanted to touch upon if you were in a position maybe where someone's passed away and you're an executor and you've got to think about inheritance tax. You know, what does that actually involve? And just look at sort of the facts of the matter, kind of illustrate maybe some things that people hadn't thought of or appreciated, because it is a really important role, actually, being an executor. Obviously, it's something that you don't have to get professional advice to do. Everyone is able to do it themselves if they have the inclination and the expertise to do so. But there are some risks. So, just really wanted to talk a little bit about that with the inheritance tax perspective and the Inheritance Tax Act hat on rather. So, responsibilities begin from the date of death. You're the executor. If there's a will, if there's no will, it's an administrator. You've got to value all the assets of death. So, property, land, bank accounts, cars, antiques, jewellery, motorbikes, anything else that you may have or that person may have had in their possession, and look at all the liabilities as well, so loans, credit cards, mortgages, funeral liabilities, all that sort of stuff. Also got to make inquiries with the family. Did that person within the 7 years before they died have any gifts that they made that then come back into their estate? Maybe they didn't live that 7-year period we talked about before. Maybe there was some kind of trust arrangement where they received an income from a trust as a beneficiary. So all of these things, if you're an executor, you've got to look into, get the correct information, and then report that to HMRC, to the revenue. So let's say you've got that information, you're the executor, you're about to report to the revenue, and you need to do that to get your grant of probate, which then means you can collect in the assets and eventually pay them to the beneficiaries. So you've got to complete a full tax return. If you pay inheritance tax, and sometimes even if you don't have to pay inheritance tax, we have to complete what's called an IHT 400. So if you Google that, you'll see that that's a rather long document. It starts off about 16 pages, and that's just the basic version. You've then got a number of other supplementary pages. There's sort of 20 or so extra pages that you need to complete. So it's not a short form. You've got to calculate and correct the correct amount of inheritance tax payable, and then once you've done that, you've got to pay it on time. So the actual rule is that interest on the full amount of outstanding inheritance tax is payable from 6 months after the end of the month in which the death occurred. So not actually a long period of time when you're looking at the extent of all the inquiries you may have to make. And further to that, you've actually got to submit your return within a year of the date of death. That's your IHT 400, as I mentioned earlier. So once you've done that, if anything then changes later on, you have to tell the revenue about that. That might mean that a bank account turned up that you didn't know about, or an asset was actually worth more than you thought it was at the time. You have to tell the revenue that and pay the balance of the tax. And when you're talking about tax of 40%, it doesn't take a lot for that to be a significant amount of tax, and obviously the revenue are going to want to know about that. So part of doing those inquiries at the beginning, it's sometimes important, depending on the nature of the assets, to get proper valuations. So that's not always straightforward. When the property market is volatile or amounts are rising, get professional valuations. What if you've got antiques or unusual assets? Get some professional valuers in, to make sure that those values are correct. Because actually, sometimes once you've submitted all that information to the revenue, they might write to you and say, well, actually, how did you come about this value? We think that the value is this or that, and then you get into correspondence about that. So there's a lot to it, and part of my job, as well as doing all the calculations and doing all this work for a client who is the executor, it's about knowing the things that we actually have to tell the revenue, at what point we have to tell them, because unfortunately, if you're not an expert in this, you're not going to know all the intricacies of the points in which you have to update the revenue on things that change and know what the requirements are. I mean, again, if anyone's interested, just Google IHT 400, have a look at the kind of forms. They're quite extensive, really. So that's your inheritance tax, and a side note, as an executor, you've also got some other types of tax to report. So you've got income tax you've got to settle to the period to death. You've also got income tax to settle for the period from the date of death to when everyone's paid their entitlement, and that's called the period of the administration. And then within that, if you've made capital gains within the estate administration for assets that you've sold at more than the probate value, so the value at death, you've got to pay potentially some capital gains tax on that. Going back to the deadlines as well, so we talked about the full return being submitted in a year, and the inheritance tax interest being payable on the full amount from 6 months from the death in which the death occurred. If you don't submit the return on time, the revenue can issue penalties for that, over and above the interest. And actually, it's quite a serious business, because potentially there's a lot of tax at stake, as you can imagine. So the key things to think about, I'm an executor, I know that I've got some tax to pay, or I think I've got some tax to pay in this estate. You know, do I need some help with this? Because as an executor, you're personally liable for your actions. If you make a mistake, it's your name on the forms and the tax returns, even though it's not your money. It's your responsibility. You've got a fiduciary, we call it capacity or responsibility, to act in the best interest of the estate and the beneficiaries. So you've got to act in their best interest. You can't, benefit from your role in that manner. You have to do what's best for the beneficiaries, and you don't want to go around paying more tax or paying penalties when you shouldn't have done either of those things. And if you make a loss, you've got to be made to put that right in the estate. And then the other thing really that people, I suppose, it's important to appreciate, and I've come across this too sometimes, is that really, particularly when you're talking about gifts, let's say, that someone's made, and then bringing them back into the estate. So if someone gave away assets during their lifetime in the last 7 years, we have to bring that back into the calculation. You do have to declare those to the revenue. You can't just imagine or forget they happened. It's a legal responsibility, and actually IHT and evasion of IHT, it's very serious, just as any other kind of tax evasion. It's actually, there've been examples when people have been given serious financial penalties, and actually even custodial sentences in very extreme cases of trying to evade paying inheritance tax. So message would really be, consider the situation. Is it worth a conversation, at least, if you're an executor with someone who's got the expertise? It might not be that complicated, but at the same time, we don't know what we don't know as individuals. I remember when I was back on, I was on your show back in February. My example was like the car mechanic example. So, drive a car, have my family in that car going down the motorway. I get how the car works, but I'm not an expert. I'm not a mechanic. I wouldn't feel comfortable with doing work on the engine if the engine was about to blow up. Would I risk doing it myself with my limited spanner and toolkit, and then it blow up halfway down the motorway? I'd ask a professional to have a look at that, because I wouldn't want that risk, that personal risk, and that of my family. So it's same sort of example, really. It's just about we have professionals out there for a reason who can help us, and to be honest with you, in this kind of thing, drawing on what I said earlier, we do have some significant allowances that the government gives us that we can rightfully claim after someone's passed away for the benefit of the estate. And more often than not, the cost of solicitors, lawyers, legal fees, and actually pointing out where those are, the benefit way outweighs the legal fees quite often. We're talking big savings. So the message again is, if in any doubt, have a chat, give us a call.
That's right, 0121 624 4000 or thursfields.co.uk. Thursfields Solicitors over there in central, in fact, over there, we're in central Solihull now. So they're a stone's throw away from us, and they are the team of solicitors that support Solihull Radio. So, right, last couple of things. Thank you very Edward, can I just say, you are very good at this stuff.
Thank you.
You are very clear, and my understanding has developed this evening. So thank you very much for coming into Solihull Radio and explaining it so well.
You're welcome, and I hope it was interesting. As you mentioned about the podcast, people can replay it, because it's not always the most exciting subject, let's be honest, but it's there if people want to have a bit of a dig, have a listen.
Information.
Hopefully it's of use. Yeah.
Information. Right, last couple of things then this evening before we finish in sort of 11 minutes' time. If you are a Solihull resident or a resident of the local area, you would have not failed to notice that towards the end of this month we have the Solihull Summerfest. And I urge you, if you are thinking about going, there's some great bands, great artists coming up on the Solihull Summerfest. The team organising that event have worked incredibly hard. Their marketing, their development, their plan, it's just so good this year. And there's two things that I want to suggest to you. Number one, the day or the night before the Summerfest begins on the 24th of August, they are doing an open-air cinema showing The Greatest Showman in Tudor Grange, and it's from 6 o'clock in the evening till 9 o'clock in the evening, and tickets are going quite fast, so they urge you, if you want to go to an open-air showing of The Greatest Showman in Tudor Grange Park, see if you can get your tickets as quickly as you can. I am actually in talks for our next competition over next week for some tickets. for Summerfest. So have a look out on our social media feed for ways of entering for tickets for the Summerfest on the 25th and 26th, the bank holiday weekend. Weren't our competitions over the last couple of weeks excellent? The Firejacks vouchers went brilliantly well, and the team, led by James over in Touchwood, upstairs, up the escalators, directly ahead of you on the left there, the new Firejacks restaurant. Their motto is Meat, Fire and Friends. So if you are interested in any of those three, head over to the new Firejacks establishment in Touchwood here in central Solihull and see what you think. Congratulations to our 4 winners for those £50 vouchers. And did you also see a day after we drew the winner for the Ramada Hotel here in Solihull, just over the way at the end of the high street there, 4 tickets, 3-course meal and an evening of a Take That show, tribute show, the best Take That tribute show in the country currently. And so well done to all of the people and many congratulations and thank you for entering our competitions. News of new competitions will be coming up very shortly, especially the Summerfest one, but we are also in talks with a lot of the retailers here in central Solihull. I'm going to play a request now that I've had from Kate. Now, Kate likes her musical theatre, and I've found a really lovely recording of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Mis, and I'd just like to play that out for you this evening, Kate, and I hope you enjoy it.
There was a time when men were kind, when their voices were soft, and their words inviting. There was a time when love was blind, and the world was a song. And the song was exciting. There was a time then it all went wrong. I dreamed a dream in time gone by, and hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. I was young and unafraid. Some dreams were made, used, wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come at night, with their voices soft as thunder, as they tear your hope apart, as they turn your dream to shame. With endless wonder, he took my childhood in his stride, but he was gone when autumn came. And still I dream he'll come to me, that we will has killed the dream. I
There you go. I Dreamed a Dream, and that was the Anne Hathaway recording requested this evening by Kate, so thank you very much for that. Right, it's time for us to say goodbye this evening. So, Edward, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
You're welcome. Anytime.
And it's, like I said before, really beneficial. Keep an eye out on our social media feeds, everyone, for our next hashtag Legal Hour. In a month's time, a Tuesday evening, Tuesday Thoughts will be put aside for the legal team to come over and discuss any topics. Now, on our social media, just before we go, we will be putting out some ideas, some lists for you to choose some of the topics that you most want to have some advice or some guidance about, so that we can tailor your featured content podcast exactly to your requirements. So let us know via our social media. We'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks. This is our last track this evening. Stay tuned over the next couple of days for some featured content and shows from the other presenters that are going to be starting here on Solihull Radio. We've got some new presenters in the wings waiting to get started. So as soon as their training is done, they'll be out and in the community interviewing you, especially people like Debbie. Debbie interviews anyone if they stand still long enough. So they'll be there. And just join us again. Keep an eye out on our social media feeds and here in central Solihull in the Touchwood area for our offices and studios. I'm going to finish with another Aretha Franklin. We're wishing her all the very best from the radio station here, but we're going to finish with respect. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.